Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week is Millennial Mike. Welcome back, Millennial.
Good to see y'all. Good to see y'all, or hear y'all, or think about y'all on the other side of that microphone.
And on a good week, too, because we have, I think, what is the most important news for you is that new Godzilla trailer. But first, if this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the more personal side of the show, what Millennial Mike and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 581. This one got the internet up in a blaze, gamers in specific, and it has not gone away. I've seen it in several comment sections still on Facebook, on Twitter, on X, I should say. PlayStation Plus subscribers are expressing their dissatisfaction with the recent price hike in PlayStation Plus subscriptions for both PS4 and PS5. So this ended up being an over 30% increase in all the tiers. Many are considering canceling their subscriptions due to the higher costs, and some Reddit users have even shared their plans to downgrade or cancel altogether, along with instructions on how to cancel. This price hike appears to have sparked a significant reaction among PlayStation Plus community, and it's clear that this increase has generated a lot of discussion and frustration among gamers. So this one ended up going up $20 on the smaller tier and $40 on the more expensive tier. And last week we had gone specifics on the pricing, but now we're actually seeing the fallout of this as gamers are going, this is too much. Like, it's too much of an expense to play online.
So this is something that I've actually, because the last Sony console I had was a PS4. I sold it. But at the time I was playing Overwatch. Well, it was a while back. It wasn't even toward the end of the time. By the time that I sold, I hadn't been playing anything on it really at all. But I played Overwatch with it. I remember playing the Star Wars first-person shooter game on it and a few other online games. But I don't ever recall needing to have like an online subscription. I wonder if maybe at that time they hadn't like made it where you had to have it, or exactly what the whole PlayStation Plus subscription really was. Because I've always heard the PlayStation subscription being kind of like, I guess, an antidote or like an argument for Xbox Game Pass, something like that.
It's like a lesser Game Pass, but it's pricey as hell, and you do need it to play online, just like Game Pass, I guess. But to me, the value is much greater in Game Pass for sure.
Well, I was able to play games online because some games can opt out of it. Like, you don't need to, like, for games that are only online, right? You don't have to have it, right? Because if you buy the game, you don't also have to buy. Because like I said, I play games online. I don't recall actually having to buy that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good if you didn't have to, because I know when I used to play Call of Duty, I needed PlayStation Plus to play online with my friends. However, that's not an online-only game, but Overwatch... Right,
there's a campaign mode. So if you want to unlock the extra features, that makes sense. Because if you're playing like Overwatch, which is online only, then you wouldn't pay $60 for the game and then pay Game Pass. It doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, though, it's funny because I've always remember, even like right Game Pass was a thing, I always remember people kind of like talking about PlayStation Plus, like, yeah, whatever, you got to do it. And then when Game Pass came out, people really were like, yeah, it's like Game Pass, it's, you know, it's a joke, you know? And the thing is that they never really invested like a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of time or energy really trying to make it a very appealing thing. They've always, I think part of the reason is because PlayStation was always mostly front and center the single player narrative storytelling games. Felt like the online gameplay was always kind of just secondary, whereas Xbox came at it from more of the media angle and the online content and stuff like that. So when they actually are both like right next to each other, like the PlayStation Plus subscription looks garbage.
Yeah, and the online has always been lagging ever since the PS3. When I used to work at GameStop, it was always the known thing of like, okay, PS3 at the time did not charge for online play, but it ended up being a shittier experience. Yeah. Or you pay online and play proper on the Xbox 360, I think it was at the time. And then PlayStation started charging for their online services, claiming that it's to improve the infrastructure, but it still is not as good as the Xbox One. It's still lagging behind them. So they're charging more, they're increasing prices. And gamers are like, you're not really providing us value aside from promising us that this is to better the services.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've always heard, because I haven't always been like a big Xbox gamer. I had the original Xbox, I had a 360. I didn't have a one. I had a PS 1, 2, 3, and 4, but I'm probably not going to go back unless they really want to screw me over with Final Fantasy 7 Remake 2, then I might have to do it, but I'll be very upset about it. But I've always heard in general that people prefer playing games online on Xbox. And a lot of times when I would ask them or press them about it, they wouldn't really be able to articulate why. But I think that maybe it all chalks up to just historically better online, experiences, and most of their friends chose it because of that kind of just in general better experience. And that kind of just compiled until today. And now they have Xbox Game Pass and everything is running really smoothly. It makes a lot more sense today for an online game where you go that way.
One of my favorite responses to this, when I put up the graphic on Instagram, someone commented with, "That's just 2 PS5 games. What's the big deal?" And I'm like, well, maybe 2 whole PS5 games isn't a big deal to you, but to us non-money bags, like that's $160 fucking dollars.
I don't know. In general, like if you're playing online competitive games, I again really would urge you to look into PC gaming. That's another reason why it's like I really just don't get the whole, I'm going to pay $160 so that way I can play online competitive games on my PlayStation. Like, come on.
And then come on, right? You get PC Game Pass.
Right, exactly. It depends on what game you're playing, of course, but there is that option.
Well, I will definitely be getting Game Pass this winter. I'm really close to pulling the trigger on an Xbox Series X. I'm just waiting for those Black Friday deals to come out and see what kind of bundles they release. And I will finally upgrade. And most of it will be mainly Leo checking out Minecraft and some of the other games. Maybe we'll be able to play some Halo co-op because I've never played the Halo games. And I think that'd be fun for him and I to play. It's just like a sci-fi shooter. It's not, to me, it's not gory. It's not like you're shooting
definitely not
or anything like that. So,
but the new Halo,
and well, yeah, and even up to the new Halo, which I would love to play. This next bit I saw a lot of frustrations on too. With it's just perfect for me because there's people going after PlayStation. I'm like, yeah, I get them, and now it's like people mad at Disney or they're trying to blame Spectrum. I want to get your take on this. So, Disney's recent actions are impacting Spectrum users negatively. So for any regional Brokettes or anyone overseas, Spectrum is basically a major cable service provider here in the States. Now Disney's pulled their networks from Spectrum due to disputes with Charter Communications, which is the parent company of Spectrum. And this means that Spectrum subscribers cannot access Disney-owned channels like ABC, FX, and ESPN, which was the big deal because people wanted to get in on their football games. Disney wants more money, while Charter claims Disney is trying to make everyone pay for their expensive content, regardless of whether they want it. Right now, it remains unsolved, but even when Bobby put up on our Discord that when you try to access the Disney channels on Spectrum put up a message that's like, look, we offered them a fair deal, but Disney increased their prices. And so we said no, and we walked away from it. So they're letting the consumers know that they were willing to play ball in Disney instead of saying, okay, let's renew the contract. They went, no, we want more money in an era where, as he was pointing out, and Jared was pointing out, there's less cable subscribers than there were 5 years ago, and Disney wants to charge more for less eyeballs watching their content. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, from what I've heard about Disney Plus is that they're not really doing that great. And the funny thing about it is they had pretty lofty ideas about what their subscription service was going to be, and no one thought that it was going to fail or that it would even waver because it's Disney, which is kind of interesting and kind of funny. I think that what has happened is that they've kind of like devalued their service so much because now no longer are there movies, these movies that you get every once in a while and you have to wait for them. They're all CGI'd now. there's just less value. They're less cinematic. They're more televisual. And then now you have a lot of these movies coming straight to their Disney platform. And those movies oftentimes don't really have any real impact or value as far as the narrative that they're trying to tell. They're kind of just throwaway. It's like shovelware, basically. So they've managed to do this. And now they're trying to, they've been trying to suck all the money out of the theater chains, Now look at the next distributor. Like, okay, where do you go to watch movies? Where do you go to watch TV? So they're trying to constantly suck all the capital out of the distributor of their content. And I think it's just kind of funny how it works. Like when streaming is no longer gone, that's completely a dried up husk. Where are they going to go next? But I will say another thing I have to mention too. I think it's quite interesting that we're seeing arguably two different companies that are in a very monopolistic environment on their own, clashing against each other. I think that after the ISPs, the internet service providers, I think that the film studios are like, if they aren't already there, they're on their way to being like, the internet service providers have been monopolies for so long that we've gotten used to it. Like Charlie will tell like Cox, and Cox will tell Verizon, and Verizon will tell AT&T, like, hey, this is where I in, this is where you in. And they uphold each other's boundaries to actually keep the monopoly going. Like pretty soon, that's how the movie studios are going to be, if there are any left.
My big thing with this was, how much pressure now does Disney have from their advertisers who are going, wait, so you're not doing this deal with Spectrum? It's like, yeah, it's a smaller number, but now our advertising eyeballs are going down as well. So my big question is, who's going to blink first? Is it going to be Spectrum from people that may cancel cable straight up because they're not getting these channels? Or will it be Disney, who is probably getting pressure from advertisers going, well, we're not just going to advertise on Disney Plus and in your theaters or whatever. Like we need cable as well. So I don't know. I really hope that Spectrum holds out. And I'm not a fan of Spectrum. But they're the lesser evil. I dislike Disney a lot more.
I hate having to choose between two evils. I mean, I have used Spectrum, and you do what you got to do. There's some nefarious things your internet service provider can do to you that Disney just simply can't do. Although Disney has a lot of power over culture, which is, I think, an issue. So it's both very nefarious. I don't like it.
Whoever wins, we lose.
Let them fight. But what I will say is, either way, I would argue that either way this goes, it'll be a silent loss. Like both these companies are great at taking L's and pretending like they're W's, or pretending like they didn't happen. So unless we're like scouring the web for what happened, no one's gonna know.
Well, let's head on over into some Netflix news, as they're doing well. They're a streaming service that's coming out on top. They're still the most popular one. And now they've got their latest hit with Netflix's One Piece, which, according to them, has surpassed Netflix records set by shows like Stranger Things and Wednesday. It became the number one, quote-unquote, number one show in 84 countries during its debut weekend, showcasing the growing popularity of this anime worldwide, or even anime in general. Some fans and sites say that the success of this live-action anime adaptation is breaking Hollywood's curse on anime adaptations. So in the months leading up to this, you had mentioned that the fan base has been oddly not overly negative about this adaptation, and it seems like, at least according to Netflix, the fans followed through and have been watching, and has apparently captured some of the general audience as well.
It's true that the people who are watching this, which you would call those fans, are enjoying it. Part of it, I think, is that the bar has been lowered so much that people are kind of ready to accept anything. I remember that that was kind of the case with The Mandalorian.
Oh yeah.
The Mandalorian, like a lot of my friends watch the show. They say they love the show. It's so amazing. It's the best Star Wars they've ever seen, or whatever. But it's like, it came after a long drought of good Star Wars content. So anything that's just neutral to them is great. And they were just sucking it down, I think it's similar to this. I mean, I looked at the trailer and I thought about it. I'm like, I wouldn't avoid it. Like if my brother said, hey, I'll watch it, even if it was just for giggles, then I would watch it with him, and I would just be like, yeah, whatever, But I really don't feel that strongly about the show. It looks like a very safe, which is what most of the time what a lot of people will settle for. They'll settle for safe because they'd rather have something that's safe and, oh, he's wearing this thing. It looks like I remember just the dumbest stuff. Then they would have something that's very ambitious and it wants to, bite off more than it could chew, perhaps. So I don't think that the success of this movie is going to necessarily create a trend that's positive. I think it's going to mean we're going to get more shows just like this. And I'm not necessarily sure I want a bunch of shows like this.
Well, it's kind of weird how I really couldn't explain, honestly, why, unless I actually watched it myself. I don't know if it's mediocre. I don't know if it's terrible. I don't know if it's good. But my confusion is it's a popular anime, but it doesn't seem like the kind of anime that would capture more than just its fan base. And I know that the One Piece fan base is pretty big, and I wouldn't say it's the size of like Dragon Ball, but it is a long running manga and anime. I don't know. Like, it's just, this would not have been the anime that I would have guessed that the adaptation would have taken off for it. In fact, when they announced we're going to adapt One Piece into live action, I was like, why that one out of all things? Why not, Punch One Man or even Demon's Lair? Like, that one's as popular as it is now. I don't know. Like, I feel like something like that would be a more viable adaptation than something as long running as One Piece. But again, I'm proven wrong, and apparently it is this massive hit. Like, I cannot ever predict what people are going to tune into.
Okay, but this is the thing, right? This marketing tells us nothing. Like, the whole purpose of this is that way podcasters across the world are talking about it and then advertising it to their listeners. That's the whole point. Before this show, do you know what show was number one on Netflix, in however many countries? No, because it wasn't important. Like, they've been hyping the show up, and for due reason, because they did spend a decent amount of money on it, and they've advertised it in a very decently manner. They haven't slammed their fan base. They've been quite humble about it. They've been very like, hey, I hope that you enjoyed this, and we got the creators, goodwill or whatever. I mean, they've tried to like establish a lot of goodwill with the watchers, with the potential audience, right? And then of course, this is going to go on the big screen on Netflix. You open it up, that's the first thing that popped up. Trending number one. One Piece, and then they'll have the other shows they want to advertise. We control all of this. So once you're in the Netflix portal, they completely control the narrative, and that's how it is here too. Number one, it's like, okay, this could be their worst week in like the last 10 years or whatever, and they're number one on that for like this week or whatever. And then last week it was some random like serial killer documentary. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, it means nothing, And I'm afraid that Netflix, Netflix does this a lot. They really kind of milk the they control the narrative a lot, and a lot of the time the shows are just very, very average and kind of just cheap and kind of just trashy, But that's just my opinion.
Well, I do want to go back on what you mentioned here, that you said it seems like they spent a lot of money on this. They're marketing it. They got the creator's blessing. These are all check marks that would otherwise satisfy you. You and I have talked about how they would need to dump a lot of money into a good anime adaptation and advertise it well for something to work. But I remember you were saying, well, these studios wouldn't do that because these haven't been hits recently, especially. They're not going to.
Well, let me qualify this, because I can qualify all the statements quite easily. So one, the money part. The first thing is the TV show. The problem, and I've talked about this before, whether it be on my podcast, which, forgive me for my lack of, but anyway.
Plug it. What's the name?
Rolling Council.
But you'll talk about this right? Watch the show, then talk about it.
Or on this podcast, I feel like Netflix purposefully says One Piece is coming out. This is coming out. X, Y, or Z franchise. This is coming out, but they make it extremely ambivalent as far as if it's a movie or a TV show, so that you can't tell until you look it up and you like read into it, or you go on to Netflix and you see, oh, there are multiple episodes here. They want to make all their content just like ubiquitous, just content, right? And I don't like that, because there is a difference, but there will always be a difference between movie and TV or series. Always, every time. If you spend a certain amount of money and then you split it up over 8 episodes. You hire a bunch of TV actors and you recycle the same writers that you have on every other Netflix TV show. If you look at all the credits on here, they're just the writers from their other exclusive shows. They just kind of shop them around. You know what I say? So where's all the money going? Like, I don't care about just the budget, although it's more reliable when it comes to movies. It's even less reliable when it comes to TV shows. And even then, budget does not directly correlate to what I actually care about, which is production value. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the blessing of the creator. So a lot of creators are just very curmudgeonly and they won't ever give blessing no matter what. Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking of. And the thing is that a lot of creators, they don't want to believe that someone could potentially, and probably will, if they allow it, make a thing out of their franchise that will be more successful simply because it has more eyes and a bunch of lowest common denominator people, and their moms and their brothers and their, people are all going to the movie theater on a weekend to watch it. So it's like I poured into this comic book, I poured into this book, I poured into this or that for years, 6 years for a video game or whatever. Someone makes a movie 2 years, waste the budget on it. It looks crappy, bunch of CGI, and everyone's there because it's a movie. And I can see it as a creator. What I will say is that a lot of Japanese creators are very willing to give their blessing, as long as you ask. If you even ask, they're willing to give their blessing. I'm trying to think of other examples. I can't think of any rats out my head. But even like, for instance, the Ghost in the Shell movie, right? Mm-hmm. People hated that movie. The production value was way better. The movie looks like it's going to be better than this. Let's just be honest. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson, blah, 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 you don't like her. I don't care. It's a better product. And guess what? The creator gave his blessing. That doesn't matter. It's just something to stick on the bullet point when you're doing your marketing, in my opinion. It doesn't
for the weebs, right? I think for them to be like, oh, well, he said it's cool or whatever.
Don't lump me in with them. But yeah, I mean, there's just more to it than that. I mean, if this was a great project and someone gave their blessing who I really felt like, okay, they must have earned it, then yeah. But so many people are either not willing to give their blessing no matter what because of their ego, or they are willing to give their blessing just because they feel happy to be here and like, oh, this is going to hit a market that maybe my project wouldn't have hit. So why not give my blessing, I don't know. There's a lot to it. I can't pretend like I know all of the nuances, but there's more to it.
Do you see yourself checking this show out at all in the next year?
The thing is that there's a lot of factors when I'm thinking about this. So I went to Impel Down, which is quite a while into One Piece. I forgot exactly. It's like about half, probably a little bit less than halfway into the series thus far. When I was watching it last. Maybe even less than that, because the show has gone on for a while. But if I watch this show, there's going to come a point where, because obviously they're going to want to make more, right? There's going to come a point where I'm going to have to watch the next one, and then there's going to come a point to where, and at the rate they're going through the story, it's going to catch up to where I was in the series. There's no real reason why I'm not watching the anime, aside from the fact that it's just super long. Mm-hmm. It's actually pretty decent, and some of the animation and action scenes, especially later, are quite amazing. So at this point, it's like, if you're a One Piece fan and you're starved for One Piece content and you'll watch anything, you'll probably watch this like low budget looking, just kind of dopey CGI garbage, But if you like One Piece and you haven't seen the rest of it, like I haven't, just watch the show, which I'm more likely to do than watch the show. And I'm not very likely to do that. So if that answers your question.
All right, well, that's good. Again, I wasn't expecting you to not check this out, which is kind of interesting. So, but yeah, I do have it on my list, and I have seen some of the anime, like maybe 5 episodes of it. I watched that Golden Palace movie or whatever. I got dragged to that one when I was working at the comic shop, confused to hell as to what was happening. I don't know why these weebs were clapping when a random character showed up. It was very fan servicey, yeah. So,
yeah. It's
but
very, very long.
I'll check out the show eventually, and I do hope that Netflix spins a #1 hit out of Rebel Moon when that comes out, just like they did with Army of the Dead.
Day one.
Another number one guaranteed hit will be the one that you are also going to check out on day one. It is Arcane, based on League of Legends, is set to return with Season 2 Winter 2024, as announced during the 2024 Tencent Video 5 Vision conference. So the show has been a hit among fans, and its success might lead to more animated series based on Riot Games' games. If you haven't seen it yet, Arcane explores a conflict between magic technology and differing beliefs in Twin Cities, Pitover, and Zaun, which features characters like Vi and Jinx. You ready for season 2?
Yeah, I still hold up to this day that Arcane is the best animated project that has come out in the past 10 years. And there have been many anime that have come out since then. This was in November of 21 that this came out. But it's still just hands down the best. The voice acting quality in English is better than any other animation you'll get, period. Except for, I mean, it's actually quite similar. Haley Steinfeld on both Arcane and on Spider-Verse, which is funny. But yeah, just the overall quality is just amazing. And the innovation in animation is industry leading. So yeah, I'm super excited about this. I'm also happy to hear that they are waiting until 2024, because even now that seems like it might be a little bit of a wait, but winter of 2024, so almost a full year and a half from now. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy they're taking their time, and I'm also happy that we kind of have an idea when they're going to be releasing the product. So I'm sure that between now and then we'll get trailers and other kind of promotional material that'll kind of keep us tied over. So the company Fortiche, the animation studio that does this, they can basically do no wrong in my book until they do. So I'm all on board.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. I know you liked it a lot more than I did, but I'm going through and rewatching season 1 slowly in between all the other stuff that I've been watching. I kind of jump around. And yeah, I'm trying to go back through season 1 again, because it has been, you mentioned it, 2021. It feels like it's only been a year maybe, but it's been a little while since season 1. And I remember when they said season 2 was coming out, I'm like, oh, that's going to be forever away though. I bet you they haven't even started this thing. And sure enough, it's been 3 years by the time it releases.
Yeah. Well, they started it as soon as the other one was finished. And to top that off, a lot of the assets are already complete. So there'll be less work in that way. So I think that the momentum that they have will help them to create this, quicker than they did the first time. The first time they finished a lot of it, and it was kind of just, they weren't able to release it because they were looking for someone to actually release a project. So they were working on it for a very long time, despite it was a passion project. Basically, Netflix just said, hey, have as much money as you want. And typically I find with animated projects, which is why I'm a big proponent of animation on streaming services as opposed to live action. For some reason, the money actually seems like it ends up where it needs to go. Like it always actually affects the production value. So yeah, I'm super stoked.
Yeah, you're right about that, because I noticed that on the Bee and Puppy Cat Netflix remake that they released. I noticed that recently with Fiona and Cake on HBO Max, or on Max now, and it looks like higher end animation, and of course Arcane there. Now, famously, Netflix cut back on their animation like a year ago, and then now Max cut down on the Cartoon Network studios. So we're probably going to get less animated content, it seems like, but at least the ones that did kind of rise to the top, like Arcane, are here to stick around at least. It doesn't sound like they're cutting those. And with you saying that they're going to be even quicker now that the assets are done. So you heard it here first. Millennial Mike has confirmed 2025 for season 3. All right, so this next one is another record breaker, as Taylor Swift, which is probably the first time I've ever mentioned that name here on in the 10 plus years of the podcast.
It's for a good reason.
It is for a very good reason. Her concert film, Taylor Swift: The Eras Tour, is set to hit theaters on October 13th, and it has already broken records. In just 24 hours, it earned an impressive $26 million in pre-sales at AMC theaters. Why does this matter? Because it has surpassed the previous record held by Spider-Man, No Way It's Cinema. AMC went the extra mile to accommodate high demand, upgrading their systems and restricting their rewards program for online purchases. So the Swifties, the Swifters, they kicked Spider-Man to the fucking curb, and good riddance. I bet you that concert film, I haven't seen either one, but I bet you that concert film was better than No Way It's Cinema.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking like, okay, this is kind of unfair because, the concert was already pre-produced. They filmed it and then they just basically kind of like did some editing and released it. But that's what they basically do with the Marvel movies.
Yep. Probably more work went into the concert.
Yeah, they have to have actual performers there. Yeah, like you can't fake that.
No green screen either.
So yeah, that was my little zinger for the day. Thank you. Good night.
And that's literally the only reason I put this on here. So good on Taylor Swift. Good on any other person who ever had toppled these MCU films. I'm happy for it. Warner Brothers Discovery has their latest excuses as they expect a $300 to $500 million drop in earnings this year. They're blaming it all on the strikes. They predicted increased cash flow this year since they cut back on content creation during the strikes. But now they're saying that the SAG-AFTRA delays have hurt their long-term reputation and success, and they believe that the outcome of this strike will significantly impact their financial outlook. Warner Brothers Discovery blames every fucking thing but themselves. They don't look at their fucking shitty-ass movies that lose a lot of money, like The Flop or The Blue Flop, and instead they're saying it's because of these writers that we're losing millions of dollars. And I get that that's their job. They're supposed to make themselves look good. They're supposed to justify their position. But it's incredible to me that I feel like people are becoming more and more cognizant of these lies because how transparent is this fucking headline?
Before we get to this subject, I had an intrusive thought and I have to let this out. Has anyone called it dung beetle yet?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, man.
It's got to be like, the Flash and Halo crap. Oh, dung beetle.
Dung beetle, yes.
Yeah.
Blue Flop is what I was calling it. It didn't really take off, but dung beetle's a good one.
But with Warner Brothers, it's like, it's funny because most of the issues they've been having lately have been administrative ones. And it really isn't, I would say, purely a creative issue. And the reason why I say that is because, while I'm not necessarily a big fan of all the creatives who've been making things, I would say that it's really first and foremost the fact that the administration within Warner Brothers doesn't allow for an environment that encourages people to make content. So I think the end result is that you don't have a lot of creatives. You have people like Nolan leaving and Zack Snyder leaving and things like that. But, and now we're just getting, these situations where they're constantly, blaming the market and blaming COVID and blaming this or blaming that, or, oh, there was a fire or, whatever. It's like, you need to get even if all these things were true, you still need to keep your narrative in control. And their narrative is really, really bad.
Well, the other guy that's on the ropes, did you hear about Gunn and how he blamed Facebook for, did you see all those comments that they found of him on these threads and talking about how terrible the Nolan Batman films were and how Michael Keaton's Joker, from the Michael Keaton Batman films, how Joker, Jack Nicholson was terrible?
Yeah, I did see that. What I would say about Gunn is that he comes from like this short period of time where just being as outrageous as you possibly can made you funny, even if you didn't have any other comedic abilities. Like, people think he's just so like, oh, he's a provocateur because he can just say really extremely outrageous things. Like, anyone could say scatological, antisocial things. You're not special. So he's like, oh, everyone likes this movie. This is something that definitely people would be very defensive of. So he goes back to the Nolan films. And listen, I'm not against criticizing any kind of well-regarded movie, but you have to do it with nuance. He just criticizes without any nuance. So that's why he's getting that kind of attention, and he deserves it.
Well, my favorite part about that too, someone pointed out on Twitter, was all the pedophile stuff and all his relationships with actual pedos. It's like they'll excuse that, but as soon as he starts slamming DC or Christopher Nolan, then some fans are like, oh man, I was for Gunn, but now fire James Gunn. It's like, are you kidding me?
Imagine if he was like a cultural commentator, or I don't know, like he was someone he wasn't working with like famous properties. But the fact that he's working with DC or Marvel is what's saving him, because people want the content that they believe he's going to provide. But if he was like, I don't know, like cultural commentator, a politician, I don't know, let me think, like some other kind of someone whose reputation actually people go to him for his opinions, things like that. I mean, he would have been like underneath a jail somewhere, or at least he'd be canceled off the internet, in its entirety. But I really don't get too worked up about it. It's just what it is, unfortunately.
Well, the latest thing that just popped up yesterday was that he said that his Facebook was hacked back when those comments were made. And I like it because it seems like he seems like an even bigger liar now to more people. It seems like he's exposing himself every time he tries to justify these things that he said, instead of just not commenting at all, or better yet, where's this fucking PR guy to tell him, delete all your fucking social media and we'll promote your films through the Warner Brothers Discovery channels. We'll just have you do a video. We'll put it up there anytime you want to say something about your films. But no, they just keep letting him run around fucking wild. And he's got that feature on X where his tweets are deleted after X amount of months automatically. But now it's like, I don't know who's not telling him to shut his fucking mouth, but it's not helping him. And for one, I'm like, keep doing what you're doing, Gunn.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that, so on one, I thought about it a little bit. I mean, I haven't thought about it very much because I just don't have the energy, but I thought about it a little bit. I'm like, okay, so either Warner Brothers they don't have their hands in the steering wheel and they don't know what they're doing, which is the thing that I kind of always revert to after I've done thinking about it for a while, because it's like, I don't know, it's just easier for me to believe that they don't know what they're doing, that all of this is just chaos, right? So I always go back and forth, but it's my predisposition is that a company that's as successful as it is, because it's not like it's destitute, it's doing poorly for a company of its caliber, but it's still making productions and making money, and staying afloat, and it's not gone, it still exists. But then on the other hand, it's like, okay, maybe they think that this is charming. Maybe they think that, oh, if we're giving Gunn the ability to just kind of say whatever, and we're standing with him, that this is going to kind of assuage the negative feelings of people who didn't think that we would let our artists and our creators say what they wanted to say. But it's like it's backwards, because like Zack Snyder creating a film and standing behind his film and saying, yeah, I think that if Batman got like raped in a prison, like that could happen in my movie and it would be fine. Like, of course, with the context and all that, you understood what he was saying. Like, it's kind of like shocking or whatever, but it was specifically in regards to the movies that he was making, and he was making like a statement about the kind of world that his movies were in, right? Whereas Gunn is just going around and just like slandering random people, posting random pedo tweets, just like, it's like, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're going to stand behind our creators. It's like, why don't you stand behind your creators when they have something of value?
Yep.
to say, Dude, so yeah, it's just.
Imagine if Zach had said one of these fucking things, just one of those things. Forget about it.
I want to believe that they're playing a calculated game, because if there is a formula to it, then it could be unlocked, it could be cracked, it could be figured out. But if it is truly just chaos, then there is no point in wasting any of my energy on it,
Yeah, well, this won't be the last, I'm sure. And you mentioned earlier, one of the creators that they did lose as well was Christopher Nolan. And he continues to enjoy success over at Universal with Oppenheimer, as it has now surpassed Deadpool 2 as the second highest grossing rated R movie of all time, currently taking in $788 million worldwide, and it looks like it will cross the $800 million mark soon. While it may not dethrone Joker, the highest grossing rated R movie at $1,066 million from 2019, Oppenheimer has surpassed expectations and solidified its place as a top contender in rated R box office films. So I applaud this. It's just good on Nolan, good on Universal for putting their weight behind them, for signing him on. And they made the right move. This was going to be a good pickup for whomever got Nolan, and now they're enjoying the benefits from it.
I will say that as far as I'm concerned, Oppenheimer actually won, because when you have Joker as the number one movie, which we could talk about that movie in its in its specificity later, but it's like, come on, you put like a Batman thing in a movie, it doesn't matter what it is, it's just I mean, you could argue, okay, that's not always the case, but it's like,
look at the Pattinson.
Well, right. But this is what I would say about that. A PG-13 Batman movie has a high expectation, so it has more leeway to fail. It has more opportunities, more places where it can fail. Whereas you're not expecting an R-rated movie about the Joker to do well. Honestly, I wasn't expecting it. And that movie actually set a precedent. I would say, you could say Logan set a precedent, but even then, Logan still played a lot more into, I think, expectations of what a Wolverine movie kind of is. It did kind of, exemplify, I guess, some of the cowboy western sort of things. But I think that the Joker movie is literally just like a crime drama with a character who doesn't exemplify the most outrageous elements of the Joker from the comics and whatnot, which is fine. That's completely fine for me,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I wasn't expecting this. If this movie was actually released by Martin Scorsese and it was not called Joker, I think most people would agree that it wouldn't have made this amount of money. I might not be able to articulate all the details why, but I think if you ask anyone and say, hey, if Martin Scorsese actually put his name on this, he called it something else, would it have done as well? And I think almost everyone unanimously would say no.
Right. Yeah,
what do you
think? Huge branding thing to put the Joker on there and to market it. I think they even had like a mention of the Waynes in the trailers.
Yeah. And frankly, just from a creative standpoint, I think they should have just left those things out. I think that those things were if there were any weak spots in the movie, it was when they tried to play too much into the tropes that the Joker. Because if they wanted to go that far, why didn't they just take it all the way? There's no reason why they didn't.
I wasn't as bothered by that simply because of the age gap between the two characters. And that's something that people kept saying. They're like, but how is this the Joker when the Bruce is this? It's like, it's a different fucking continuity. It doesn't matter. By the time he's Batman, this Joker's probably dead anyway. Like, this is just a one-off little movie.
Well, that's the problem. It's always a two-sided coin. Like, when you put in these, what someone would call fan service or Easter eggs or whatever, then you invite this kind of discussion into your movie that doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the movie. We're like, you have to either defend it on the merit that, it's not going to affect it. It's just there. Or you criticize it on the fact that it's there. It's like, how about it just not be there? It's like, so whatever.
Yeah, and again, we can go into it further. Obviously, there's a whole thing with Thomas Wayne in the story too, but I mean, that's neither here or there at this point. Oppenheimer has definitely done better than even I expected. I knew it was going to do well, but I'm like, all right, almost $1 billion is not something I saw coming, and I get that people were like, Barbenheimer, we got to see both. And it's like, thankfully, even if that was the reason why some people went to buy a ticket, that's fine. Like, I don't care how it made its money. I just want more out of Nolan, and I want Universal to continue to partner with Nolan to make whatever films he wants to make. And it sounds like he did with Oppenheimer. This isn't a sequel. It's not based on a fucking franchise or property. It's a historical piece told from a certain perspective and with strong fucking talent behind it. And I think it's going to be a Oscar contender for next year. So keep an eye out and keep watching good movies. Keep paying for them. You call this one cinema, and I think Martin Scorsese might agree, is Godzilla 0 to minus, and it had its debut teaser trailer.
Godzilla -1.
So tell us about this movie, because the premise on its own, like it's awful, but I still found it like it's just that dark comedy in me where I'm like, holy shit, like how much worse could it get? And then it does get worse.
First and foremost, this is my kind of movie because I like the genre fiction, and then I like when people play with genre fiction and they try to quote unquote elevate it. You know, so there's arguments out there. Is there such thing as elevated genre fiction? If you're a real traditionalist, you'd say no. The thing is that I like the cultural impact that characters like Superman, Batman, Godzilla, you know, these different kind of cultural icons have. But I also feel like because they have a cultural impact, they're a great opportunity to explore other ideas. And so I really like that they're bringing Godzilla back to kind of the more horror roots. There was always like a certain element of horror, I guess, to like the original ones. At least the idea, a monster movie was supposed to, it was kind of, what is the word? It's kind of schlocky, I guess you would say back in the day, or maybe that's not even the proper word, but they're trying to turn this into kind of like a horror movie by really emphasizing, okay, this Godzilla doesn't look cool. He's not here to like fist bump King Kong and do these like cool like video games finishing moves on these like random monsters that come out of the ground. You know, like there's a story here, there's a whole purpose and like a theme. They're bringing a theme back into it as well. I like that as well. This is World War II era Japan, and Godzilla once again embodies kind of the horror and the lack of understanding for this event that's happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I like it. They really emphasize the carnage in great explicit detail as well. Like what's going on. He's stepping in this many people. This is what the damage looks like. This is the carnage. It's not just like, some big action movie. Like it's actually quite harrowing, which I appreciate.
Well, and that's the whole premise behind this. You kind of danced around it a little bit, but this is a post-World War II era Japan. So they're recovering from this, from the bombings. And then Godzilla shows up. So that's where the title comes from, of -0 and
it's -1.
Zero to minus, sorry. And
no, just -1.
Well, I got 0 to minus on mine. Is it called -1 instead?
Yeah, if you look at the poster, it's just -1.0, -1.
Well,
if you look at the,
are you sure that's not Japan just trying to be fancy with their lettering or whatever?
Well, if you go on their official website, it says Godzilla -1.
Godzilla -1. Where the hell did I get 0 to minus? 0 to minus. What's 0 to minus?
That's why you were laughing. You thought it was a comedy. It's like it's not.
Oh, 0 to 0 to minus is something else completely. No, you're right. It's Godzilla -1. So that was what was crazy about the trailer, because I'm like, they're all suffering, right? These people. And then here comes fucking Godzilla, like, guess what, motherfuckers? It's like, Jesus Christ, like, how much worse can it get for these people? And I say that, but maybe, and I know you said it's not an action-y movie, but do you think there'll be another monster that also shows up and starts wrecking even worse?
No, I don't. Watch the first movie. This is literally the sequel.
Oh, it's Shin Godzilla?
Movie. Yeah, this is Shin Godzilla 2. Yeah.
Okay, so Shin Godzilla takes place before World War II.
That's a good question. Because this Godzilla looks the same, supposed to take place in the same universe. Although I wonder, because this is the second Toho movie that they've made with Godzilla in like a long time. So Shin Godzilla was the first one.
Something.
Right. That's a good, honestly, I should probably research that before I start spouting off, because I'm pretty certain that it is related, but the timeline I do think is different. This is an older movie, so it couldn't be the case. But what I will say is that this version of Godzilla, if you look at him, he's all like scabbed and he has like skin flaking off and all that. He looks kind of like the crusty, scaly outside of him is not like so much scales like a lizard would have, but almost as though his like a skin deformation almost. And I think that the idea of like -1, like we have 0 hour, and this is now like the next moment after that, right? So you have the initial impact. That this is almost kind of like maybe a commentary on the damage that took place after the nuclear bomb. And he's a physical manifestation literally of that, with his diseased, scabby, flaky skin. It's pretty nasty, but I think that's the point,
Yeah. So I just did a quick search on the background of the making of this, and they said that Shin Godzilla would not receive a sequel, and the Toho executive Keiji Oda instead expressed interest in a shared Godzilla universe akin to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So maybe this is the first in that, but so far, yeah, there's no connection between Shin Godzilla and the -1.
Okay. Yeah, and the Shin Godzilla actually does look a little bit different. It's funny because they both had different origins, and they both were meant to be horror characters. So I think it's interesting that they're bringing both of these Godzillas back, Toho, as these very ugly, looking characters that are meant to be ghastly and
villains.
And they're villains. Yeah, they're not. And he's literally like in the trailer, he's just trying to destroy everything. Yeah. It's almost like he's angry. Like he's like he's taking his anger out on the city because he's in such pain. So he's just like, screw you guys. You did this to me,
Yeah. What if the bombings maybe were related to something or hurt him in some way or attracted him back to the country? I don't know. We'll find out for sure. There's got to be a relation there between the bombings and Godzilla.
Yeah. I will say that in Shin Godzilla, I won't spoil it so much, but there was kind of an element of him being in pain as well. But it was more like he kind of went from like one spot to another, and he wreaked havoc because he was like a normal animal who was turned into this thing, and then he's like, "What's happening to me?" And he's like, he's like screaming, and he just kind of like goes to the city, like unwittingly destroying everything. But it was because of like the pain that he was in, like he didn't know what was happening, And this, it's like he's an angry god. He's like, I'm going to get revenge, like because he's very intentional about everything he's doing in this trailer. Like, I'm going to destroy this building. I'm going to kick these people. I'm going to stomp on this, So yeah, it's cool.
The release date for this in Japan is November 3rd of this year. And then in the US, it's December 1st of this year. And I cannot wait. I'll be watching. I don't know if there'll be a limited theatrical release. Maybe there'll be something through Fathom Events. Hopefully I can catch it through that. It's not something I'll be taking Leo to, that's for sure, because he's not interested in a movie. He wants to see the fist bumping Godzilla. He's a 5-year-old. He doesn't want to see Godzilla as a villain. I remember when my brother and I used to watch these Godzilla movies growing up, and we went back to the older ones where Godzilla was this force of nature, right? A symbolic, he was the nuclear bomb or whatever. In fact, that's where the origins came from, if I remember correctly, that the nuclear testing created Godzilla. Or woke him up, we don't know. But when those early movies, he's destroying the city and they're fighting back and they're missiles and all that, and he starts bleeding, and my brother would start crying. He's like, Godzilla! And I'm like, he's the bad guy, he's destroying the city. And he's like, no!
Yeah. No, it's funny. Because I think, honestly, I watched a lot of those Godzilla movies after I watch a lot of the newer stuff, not like the newest of the newest stuff, but like, Godzilla 2000 and like some of the later versions of Godzilla where they tried to like, even the one with like Mothra and whatnot, where he's like fighting the monsters.
And monsters?
No. Like the original one.
Okay. Godzilla versus Mothra. There was just Mothra.
Well, yeah. Where he'd fight the monster that kind of like, there was like an interesting dynamic going on between the aliens, the mutant monsters, right? And then the Earth, the Earth Defense Force, or Japan Defense Force, I forgot what they called it. But then before that, he was just like a menace, And so I feel like I got really indoctrinated by like we should have sympathy for Godzilla because although he's very destructive, he's like the white cells that are coming in. And they kind of always went with that. They went with that narrative for quite a while. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy that they're actually going back to this straight up. I'm a monster. I'm the original kaiju, like for all intents and purposes. Like I am here to wreak havoc on the city, and you're here to run around screaming.
Did you finally see the Netflix trilogy, the animated one?
The CG one? I still haven't gone out of my way to watch it. I mean, you spoke very highly of it. I had no reason not to, I guess. It's just I didn't.
They're the best.
I haven't.
It's an anime and it's Godzilla. Come on, it's all your things. And I'm telling you, it's good.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, since you asked me a little bit more forcefully, I guess I'll do it.
You gotta find your methods because you don't have Netflix anymore, right?
I mean, for all the purposes, I got what I need. I got some Netflix.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot of good news this week, a lot of good trailers, and let's head into the final portion of today's show. It's the Brokette Block, what Millennial Mike and I have been up to since you last heard us. So, Millennial Mike, what have you been playing, watching, and or reading? What's been making you broke?
So I did go see Oppenheimer since the last time that we spoke. That was quite good.
Enjoyed it?
I did enjoy that movie, although I would say it was longer than I expected.
Yeah.
But even more than that, it felt longer than I expected. Mm-hmm. It got to about the halfway point, and the movie really started to slow down. It's kind of like it's a similar situation with the movie Babylon with Margot Robbie. I got halfway in, and then it's like, hey, this is what like this idealistic movie is, or what you are here to see, like the crazy spectacle of Hollywood, or the spectacle, like when everything was fun and crazy and magic happened, right? And then the same thing with Oppenheimer. It's like, oh, this is like the first half of the movie was like, oh, this is where we were first like kind of delving into this new world of the quantum, and we're like, there's this novelty here, and then it gets us halfway part, and it's almost as though the director purposefully did it, where they're like, okay, we're gonna switch you out of that now. Like now we're gonna ground everything. Now this is like time for the court hearings in the real world, and social and political issues, and this and that. It's like it's almost like they want to contrast, like do this very postmodern subversion. We're like, hey, this is what you wanted to see, right? They get halfway into the movie, and they're like, well, actually, it's all, everything sucks and social issues and whatnot. So while I enjoyed the movie, and even the second part of the movie I think was well acted, and they had some interesting elements of writing in there, I felt like the movie could have been captured my imagination a little bit more, and just been a little bit more enjoyable to watch. Now, what he did was certainly a choice. It was a creative decision he made, so that I could say that, but it didn't have to be that way. And I can only wonder if it's if the trend. Typically, I like Nolan movies when they're more like Interstellar and less like this. His true accounts, his true to life stories, they're fine. Dunkirk was fine. This was better than Dunkirk, I think, but Dunkirk's also, there's more action in it. So yeah, I don't know. It was okay. It was okay. I watched 300 for the first time.
Oh,
I recently watched that.
Yeah, through our Discord.
Yeah. So it was good. Actually, I'm still trying to place it. I don't feel like I really should right away, because I've had to think about and discuss and ruminate over all of his other movies for such a long time before I have the current understanding that I do. So I don't want to just watch 300 in one day and be like, oh, okay, it's going to be number 2 and everything. I don't know. I have to think about it. But what I will say is that I think some of the things that I like most about Zack Snyder are in that movie. I can say just the machismo of all of the characters, and the very mythic nature of it. Like, I think that obviously carry over to Watchmen was definitely a subversion of that mythic nature. So I wouldn't say that, but it definitely carried over to his Superman movies. I'm trying to think. Baby Doll, Sucker Punch.
Oh, you're talking about Sucker Punch, yeah.
That came afterwards, right? 300.
I believe so. Like shortly after, I think. Was there a reason why you hadn't seen 300 up until this point?
No, not really. So I first got big into Snyder on Man of Steel, right?
Okay.
So I really honestly hadn't watched any Snyder movies at all until Man of Steel. And then I went back and I watched Sucker Punch afterwards. I watched Watchmen afterwards, and I kind of just started paying attention to his stuff more after that point. 300 was kind of a movie that I kind of almost forgot was his movie. I don't know why. I think it felt to me like a one trick pony. I think because if you want to point to one movie, it's all about, your speed ramping and just the explosions and the machismo and all that. That would probably be the movie. So I kind of just felt like I don't want to watch this movie and then have a stick to bludgeon one of my favorite directors with. So I kind of just was a little bit slow about it, I think. But after having seen it, honestly, I could say that it's a lot more nuanced. It's a lot more. There's a lot more meat on that bone than I originally thought. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and I think that he really did a good job with he likes taking things and making them mythic. The whole point about 300 was that the things that you're seeing are a representation that inspires people to greater. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. And that's what Superman also in a lot of ways is about. It's not that he actually is mythic. It's not that he actually is this Boy Scout, good two shoes, benevolent God kind of character. It's that through toughing it out and through presenting a certain image and following through as best he possibly can, regardless of what it means to his own, what he has to sacrifice, he's able to create this myth that people then believe. And that's just too deep for most people to even, grasp. But yeah, I'm a big fan. I'll get back to you on where I place it later.
Yeah, as far as your Snyder rankings.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah, man, 300 was one. I saw it in theaters, and I think, this was before a time where I would say it's Zack Snyder's 300. It was just, if anything, I was like, oh, Frank Miller, because that was who the comic, the movie was mostly based on. And I watched it in theaters and liked it. I was working at AMC at the time, and everyone would quote the fucking movie. This is Sparta. It captured everyone's attention. It wasn't just there wasn't a Snyder fan base, so to say, like there is now. So everyone just enjoyed it. And thankfully, I mean, you see a lot of really cool shots in there, like the red capes from the Spartans. I mean, it's almost like he made it to say, look, man, I can do superhero shit. Almost as if this was his age to do Superman.
Or Wonder Woman.
Or Wonder Woman even, yeah.
Yeah. In a world where he just didn't, delegate and just said, I'm going to do it all the way. Oh my God. Because BVS, man, people keep on saying, man, I want to see the Wonder Woman that was in the original Wonder Woman. Forget that. I want to see the Wonder Woman that was in BVS. That's the definitive Wonder Woman for me. So my favorite shot in that movie is probably when one of the Spartans, the Persians were throwing these these gunpowder bombs at him.
Yeah.
These, and one of the Spartans took a shield and he gets behind it in slow motion, and then the bombs are the sparks are kind of just deflecting off them in slow motion, his mouth wide open. He's I know exactly
oh man, it was, that's a good one.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Do you like all the actors that are in there too? Magneto shows up in there, dude, a young Magneto. He always, in everything he's ever done, giving 200%. And I just respect that so much. I respect it so much. I hope that he is not one of the thespians that ends up caving to the Disney dollar. Even Hugh Jackman is going to come back in the yellow and blue now, just because, what the heck or whatever. But he's just been so dedicated to his craft, and he's always elevated everything he's in. I think he needs to understand, there's nothing there for you, man. Magneto does not need to come back to the MCU. Well, I'm glad you finally got to see 300. That's awesome. Any other things in your Brokette Block that you wanted to mention?
I'm about 60% into the way of the Brothers Karamazov. It's a Fyodor Dostoevsky book, Russian book literature. He also is he's most known for Crime and Punishment, Notes from the Underground, and a few other things that I don't remember off the top of my head. But I've been kind of slowly going through that. While I was on vacation a while back, I got most of it done. I went from 20 to 60% over the course of 10 days, just driving and sitting in my B&B down there when I was visiting my grandparents in Texas.
Oh, nice.
So that's
very good.
Yeah. So that's been something. I've been kind of slow about it. I haven't really spent the time reading it as much, but that's been pretty good. Maybe I can give a more detailed review once I actually finish it. Also, I don't think that our fan base is really too super interested in literature.
No, they like the pictures with their words.
But it's good.
Oh, I did a bit of traveling as well. Did you fly to Texas?
No, I drove. It was like
wow, okay.
Yeah, it was like a 12, 13-hour drive, I think.
Holy shit.
We stopped the first time we stopped like 11 times. We stopped less times coming back. But yeah, it was me and my mother, father switching off, driving about like hour, 2-hour increments. And on the way back, it was like 2-3 hour increments. We did like half the stops.
Yeah, where it's like, let me just keep going.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, we're ready to get back, and we're familiar with the roads. We kind of understand what we can do, what we can't do. That was the first time I ever drove that long. I've never actually been behind the wheel for that long. And I have to say that I feel like a better driver after it. Like now I'm just driving around and I feel like I might as well be walking. Like I'm actually connected with the road the whole way. It's weird. Like I flex my driving muscle, and now I'm like really like attuned to everything.
You're a road warrior. You're just like those truckers.
Yeah, I can feel every pebble underneath my tire. It's like. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I drove 4 to 5 hours on the road there, and on the trip back to Georgia. We drove up to Georgia to visit Kelly's dad's family, so Kelly's relatives. And it was the first time I was able to make it to Georgia for this trip, which they usually do every year. And
wait, 4 hours where?
To Georgia. I don't know what part. People keep asking me what town, but I did not remember at all.
Okay. Because I'm like, okay, if you drove here straight to, like, I was like Austin area, Texas, right? We stopped like a lot of times, so I think it might have had something to do with the timing. But I think it was like 11 hours or something like that. It might have, because we had to get up like 4 a.m. And we got to like actually, yeah. So I'm like, okay. I bet you said 4 hours to Texas. I'm like, okay.
Oh no, Florida to Georgia, 4 hours.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, and that was if that was like the GPS time, it's like, all right, 4 hours and this much time. But we had the baby with us, so we ended up doing I think a stop or two, which ended up putting us at 5 hours the first time when we went to Georgia. And then on the trip back, that's where I think we made one stop. We did 2 as well, but I didn't go inside and get a Celsius or anything like that. I was just waiting in the car, get the baby changed or whatever, go use the restroom. Then let's go back. And that time we made it back in like 4 hours, 4.5 hours. And yeah, it's a lot of driving. I don't feel as tuned in to the road as you, but it was definitely an experience. And it was fun though, because the Georgia landscape, man, it's just like the houses are just acres and acres of that. That's what the lot is made up of. And it's a lot of farmers, a lot of green, of green, and a little. I would say
Texas is so dry. Have you been to Texas?
Never been, but I really want to go.
Yeah, it's quite dry. It's really, really dry. It's funny because driving from Missouri to Texas, I guess the drive there, I kind of noticed that it was getting drier and browner, but it was only until I started driving back that I really started to appreciate it. Like, man, like it's really beautiful where I live, Yes. So it was really eye-opening.
Well, I noticed that the opposite, where I'm like, man, it's really beautiful in Georgia. Like, it's just so empty compared to here in Central Florida, man. It's just getting busier and busier. All the Californians moved over, all the New Yorkers moved over during COVID, and I'm just like, this is insane. And they keep building more apartment homes. And
that's everywhere though. That's everywhere though. What's the rent like there? Like $900 probably, like for an apartment.
It's you might as well be trying to buy a house, but if you try to buy a fucking house, then that's going to be $500,000 at least.
Yeah.
It's bad.
No, that's crazy. Yeah, because out where I live, the rent is pretty obscene, but like in some of the places around St. Louis where I live, 900 is actually reasonable, and then it goes up from there. It starts at 900, goes up from there. It's insane. But like, yeah, East Coast, like where you are, I can only imagine that the rent is just insane.
Yeah, it's become one of the most expensive states to live in. And that's why I'm kind of like, Georgia's fucking nice. The houses you can get a nice house for half the price of one here in Florida.
Those
for
peaches, bro.
You get the peaches, you get the nice weather. It's not as humid as Florida. I didn't get bitten by a single mosquito while I was up there, which is insane. And it's quiet. You go outside and there's no city light pollution at all because there's very few towns. Like the famously, like one of the relatives was like, yeah, it's real nice and you're separated from everything. But at the same time, if you need to call an ambulance, it's going to be a while before they get here. Or if you have a fire.
And I guess, you'll be close to Florida. So when COVID 2.0 happens, you can just pop over and you're good to go.
Oh, do you think we'll get another shutdown?
Nah.
Oh man, I want the stocks to fall again, man. I want to get those cheap stocks.
Oh man, I just want to walk around without a mask just to get people to look at me weird, Well,
I think if they tried another shutdown, which the rumor is that they're going to try another one in December, I think most people are like, no, we're over it. Like, I don't think they can pull it off this time.
Yeah, the thing is that people were so bottled up last time that people were really having some serious mental issues and whatnot. Like
it caused more damage than what people say the disease would have done if it just I don't know. Like it's crazy.
Yeah,
the mental issues.
It's funny because I think a lot of people were like me going into it like, I can definitely do solitude. Like I like to be social, but I can definitely be by myself. It's not a problem. And then I actually did it. And I'm like, this is what suffering is. Like I need human touch. I need someone to smile at me, someone to look at me. I'll look at the mailman. Like,
you want to come watch Netflix with me?
It's just like, oh my God, and of course you didn't have to be. It's complicated, but yeah, I think a lot of times it's that people, they treated the situation to the extent where they were secluding themselves inside of their bedroom, because they thought that's what they had to do. And no one actually really told them they had to do that, but they just felt like they had to do it. So they killed themselves basically, And in some sad cases they actually did, but
yeah. Well, I know Scott loved it. He was like, I'm getting paid double what I normally get paid. And he got to just sit around and do what he normally does anyway, which is play video games and watch anime. He was living it, man.
It was fine, for the first bit, but I learned a lot about myself,
Sure. Yeah. But
Scott, go ahead with his bad self. If he can do it, go ahead. I'm working from home now, so.
Awesome, Millennial. Well, I'm glad you were on again for a good week of news and a lot of it which pertained to you. So good timing as always. And I know it's been a little while since you've done Ronin Council, but don't feel like you have to.
Well, let me tell you about Roman Council before we go. So I have always done, if you guys remember me back from the Film Exiles and then later on the Exiles Network, I always had a rotation of at least 10 people, and and that's where I really thrived. Later on we changed the Exiles Network. It was 2-3 people. It was basically me and Manu. We did that for a while. Manu went, his way. And then I'm like, okay, I can't do this because I don't really watch as many movies. And it takes a little bit more effort to go to a movie opening night, get back, do the notes and have it released on a time matter all of myself, record everything, do the show notes and all that. And then keep up with all the releases to the extent that my audience was demanding it. Now when you do Ronin Council, which came later, that was okay, it's a lot more easier for me to just sign up for Crunchyroll and then watch the anime and do that. I won't get too much into all the details, but I don't want to ask too much of my co-hosts. And they kind of have their own thing going on, and it's kind of been making it a little bit difficult to plan around that. And then I just recently moved out, and I don't really have the funds to keep up with all the things I need for recording. The reason why I was able to keep my high production value for recording was because I was paying for a separate recording. So each person's recording. If we have 3 people, 4 people, everyone's recording full wave audio files, saving to the same cloud. I'm actually out of cloud space. I don't have any more cloud space left. And then what I would do is I would actually stitch it all together myself. It takes longer to do it that way, and it takes way more storage. I have to pay for that storage. I have to pay for the recording service that I'm paying for. So not to bore you guys with all these details, but the amount of money that it costed to do that, the time that it cost to do that, and it's just like it's getting really oppressive. So I don't dislike like actually doing the podcast, but it's like it's starting to become very difficult to do.
Everything around it is the burden. I know exactly what you mean, like editing the show and all the costs associated with it, like all these different programs that I personally use for this show. Even I'm definitely operating at a loss. Yeah,
right. And I've been operating at a loss for years. You know, well, there was a period of time where actually we're at a stride, and I wasn't. No, I was still. It depends on what you consider a loss, you know. but yeah, and you know, it's like Scott and Sam, yeah, they have been very generous giving their time to the podcast as well, but it's just been kind of hard to like navigate around that. And I like to have a certain amount of consistency, but I also don't want to like require anyone to do that. So this is just the honest, like unfiltered Rona Council's truth here. I was thinking about I was throwing around an idea of doing something on my own, but I'm not sure if people really want to listen to that. And I'd be starting like basically a new podcast from scratch if I relearn to do a podcast in a different format that optimizes just me talking into the microphone and trying to make that interesting. So I don't really even know how that's going to work. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Well, step one is the biggest one, man. If you end up doing it, then, you know, that's when you'll know, like, oh yeah, there might be something here, or, oh no, this ain't it, you know, type of thing. But until you do that first thing, you won't know.
Right. Well, I am very happy that you've kept me on this podcast because it's kept my podcast toes wet, you know. So I feel like, okay, I have something going on, you know. I still haven't kind of totally forgotten it, you know?
And you don't have to edit a single thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you asked me to record or to like edit, I would. I'd absolutely help you out. You know,
I would not do that of any of you guys. It's my least favorite part is editing, but I have to do it because there's been shows that I've heard that they don't edit at all. And it's like, if my time isn't valuable to you, then why should I keep listening? Because it's like, there's some stuff in there that's like, you're not going to cut out the 10-second pause that was there, or it's just like little things like that.
Whenever I edit, I go through all. Yeah, I want to release the absolute best product. Like, honestly, I want to be able to listen to it and be like really proud of it. I think some people, they just edit it and they're like, okay, it's good. And I actually want to listen over it and be like, okay, this is like really good, you know? So if I can't do that, I feel bad about releasing it.
Yeah, plus saving people's times, because it's like, okay, let's say it's just 5 seconds I'm cutting here or there. You times that, you know, by the whole episode, and, you know, I cut out maybe 10 minutes from the show, and times that by the number of listeners, so you've collectively saved people several hours. I don't know. It's things like that I think about when that keeps me going for editing, at least. So, no, I get it, man. And I thank you, as always, for being a part of the rotation, and do let them know if there is any place they can continue the conversation, even if it's just Discord for Ronin Council.
Recently, I have been on I guess you could call it like a hiatus. I'm not really sure if I'm going to really, even like Instagram, honestly, I deleted it. I was kind of fooling around with Instagram for a little bit, just mostly like chats and stuff. But the thing is that most of the people who I speak to on any chats on social media, I can usually speak to in other forms. I really don't have a lot of places that you can really catch me. But I will say the Exiles Network Discord, I do jump in on there every once in a while. And I always appreciate like Nicole. Nicole is one of my long-term members on there. And you jump in on there and you speak every once in a while. And of course, Lazy Gaming Guys and the Reason I'm Broke Discord channels are the best place to catch me. And I spend most of my time on Discord, honestly. So you actually can speak to me at length there.
Perfect. And there will be a link to where you can find the Discord on the description of today's episode. And this week, I also want to thank Florida Geek Scene for hosting the show every week for several years now. So it's another spot you can find us. And on their website, you can find information on Florida Convention, news, reviews, and more from others than just ourselves. So you'll find other Central Florida reviewers and bloggers and all kinds of stuff at Florida Geek Scene. So thank you once again for joining us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Millennial Mike and Brokette Core. All will be well. So after the success of the One Piece live action, suddenly it broke out that Lionsgate is working on a Naturo adaptation movie by the writer of Netflix's The Witcher. Do you have any hope for that one?
So that's another funny, because we were talking about it earlier, and okay, The Witcher is writing Naruto. Like, why? Like, why? Well, the reason why is because that's the writers they have. That's who they have on staff. But
yeah, they're going, they adapted that. They can just adapt this. That's how they think.
Yeah. There are scenes. It's funny because when you're watching the anime, and then there's like certain arcs or certain fight scenes where you can actually see the moment or the animation where they literally just pour all their budget into it. And the frame rate goes up and everything has become super smooth and hand drawn. And it's just like, so like that level of production value is kind of what I hope to see in these individual like series. Like you're making like an 8-episode show or a 10-episode show. Like this whole 10 episodes should just be your highest budget, highest production value premiere content, in my opinion. So if there's any evidence that I will see something that's like really worth like checking out, like, oh my God, like that's actually amazing, then yeah, maybe I'll think about it. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Not from that writer.